recorded live in Jacksonville, Florida. This is Trivial Warfare. More than just a pub quiz, Trivial Warfare is your gateway to a worldwide trivia community. Join your hosts, Jonathan.
We just described Ric Flair as Neanderthal Man and Planet of the Apes.
Chris.
Yo, we going down to Sesame Street.
That's your impression of hardcore rap?
Carmela.
That would irritate the hell out. I'm like, I just want my groceries. My ice cream is melting.
Ben.
4 halogens in that list. Oh my God.
You were like, it's not the halogens. I'm like, no, Ben, no.
Those damn halogens got me again.
And the rest of the Trivial Warfare Army for another week of fun and games. Now here's your host, Jonathan Oakes.
Hello, everybody. This is Jonathan, and this is not a normal episode of Trivial Warfare. Actually, this is going to be a recap of my experience at Geek Bowl this year, so it'll be a monologue. I screwed up. There was supposed to be a normal episode today. It was going to be the all-women's episode. But if you've checked your podcast feed, then you know that the all-women's episode has already come out. In fact, what happened was, when I was pre-planning and pre-scheduling all of the shows to come out while I was still traveling back from Geek Bowl this last week, I pushed the wrong button, and I published when I meant to schedule. And so our patron feed got its normal episode number 259 on Sunday at 6 o'clock last week. Great show, by the way. And then on Monday, episode 260 came out on the normal feed instead of waiting the normal week. That is the all-women's episode. You should listen to it if you haven't, because it is fantastic. Lauren Carey hosted it, and it was just really, really, really good. So I hope you've had a chance to listen to that. But I didn't want to leave you empty-handed, and I did have a fantastic time at Geek Bowl, so I thought you'd like to hear possibly something about that. So I'm going to start off by talking about Wednesday. So I got in on town on Wednesday, a little bit after noon, maybe 1 or 2 o'clock, and this was earlier than most people got into town. There were a few that were there before me, but it gave me a chance to do some things before the crowd. And so one of the things that I knew I wanted to do was to go to the Chicago Art Institute, or the Art Institute of Chicago. And so I let people know that I was going to be there, and we had probably, 10 people at least in the museum that we all met up and kind of did it together. And it was awesome. I got to see Nighthawks by Hopper. I got to see The Old Guitarist by Picasso. I got to see a lot of Monet, the Haystacks. Got to see some Van Gogh. Got to see Grant Wood's American Gothic. And got to see The Island at La Grande Jatte by Seurat, which is a lot bigger than you think it is if you haven't seen it. So that was really exciting. I was really happy with that trip. And I was also happy to be in town early, because that means you can go out and you can go deeper with people when you're there early. And so everybody was there, or most of the people that were already there. We all kind of went out to the same hotel bar after people had gone out to dinner. And we had a great time together. And it was really nice, because when there aren't as many people, you can dig into some conversations and you get to know each other, and you really build some good friendships. One of the things I noticed, Jeremy Goodson, who lives in Chicago, he's obviously a warhead. He came over. He didn't get to the hotel bar until, I think it was after midnight. And he still got a good hour and a half, maybe 2 hours worth of hanging out in. So that was good. I really appreciated, Jeremy. I really appreciated you coming out. It was super fun to get to know you early, so that we could hang out throughout the week. The next day was when most people were getting into town, and my primary focus was being ready for the big Extravaganza party that we were throwing. And I say we because it was a collaborative effort between me and a lot of other trivia podcasts and Tara from the Illuminati Facebook group. We all worked really hard on that. We all worked together. We got a lot of stuff done, and it was a smash. For you guys who weren't there, I'm sorry. For you all who were there, that was a lot of fun. We had the front room with the karaoke and the big bar. There was an upstairs area. There was a back room with t-shirt printing and a photo booth, and we had some board games, and we had some Jackbox going. It was just, I mean, we had 250 plus people reserve to be there as a head count. I would not doubt if we had more people cycle through there. A couple of moments that stood out to me. I was introduced to the board game Chameleon. Lita George brought that with him, and we had a group back there playing that. I think that was Sterlocki and Ricky Young and me and Rachel Schumann and Amy Duncan Williamson and a few others. And I had never played before, and so you're supposed to look at the coordinates that's given to you, and you're trying to figure out who's it, essentially, right? They don't get coordinates. They just find out that they're it. And their job is to listen to the people who have coordinates, who are describing a word, that they use their coordinates to figure out what the word is. And they describe the word, and then the person who is the chameleon tries to figure out what that word is without other people knowing and to describe it too. And then everybody tries to figure out who the chameleon was. Well, I didn't really understand how the game went, and I went second. So the person in front of me gave the clue round. I gave the clue hot air balloon because the word that the coordinates pointed to was hot air balloon. So I made a complete fool out of myself in front of everybody. And it was pretty doggone funny. But that was a lot. That was a fun game. I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed the karaoke too. I got a huge compliment. When you do karaoke, you want to sound good. I know I want to sound good. I don't have to be amazing, but it's nice to think that you're okay. And I was talking to, I did Mac the Knife, which is something that I do pretty regularly because it's in my range and I enjoy doing it. And I was talking to Jeremy Horowitz later, and he was complimenting me. He said, that was a really good job. When that song came on, I had to turn and look because I thought that they had switched from karaoke to playing music. And then I saw that you were up there singing it. And so I actually had thought that that was from the radio. And that blew me away, y'all. I was like, wow, that means that sounded pretty doggone good. So that was a great moment. But a better moment was when David Levesey, the general, got his turn up at the mic. And I was talking to somebody, and all of a sudden I hear Mr. Jones come on. And Mr. Jones has been a thing with me and David since Boston. Since we all got to a piano bar and had them do a live version of Mr. Jones, and we had like 10, 15 people on the stage dancing and singing to it. And so when he did that, I went over to Jason Borsum, who's running the karaoke, Liquid Courage, by the way, karaoke. He's a good host, does some trivia stuff too. And I asked Jason for his mic, and before the first verse was over, I jumped on stage with David, so we did Mr. Jones as a duet, and that was so much fun. It was so much fun. And then the last karaoke story, at the end of the night, most people were gone. It was after 1:30. And I talked Scott Barber into doing Thunderstruck because he does a good AC/DC Brian Johnson imitation. And he was going for it, and I'm the one who encouraged him to go up there. And I like doing that imitation too, but I'm not that good at it most times. Anyway, I'm standing, and I'm listening to myself sing along with it, and I realize, hey, I sound good tonight. I've got this. And so near the end of the song, I jumped up on stage with Scott, and we sang that together too. And I went full on Brian Johnson. And those were just some moments with the karaoke that I absolutely loved. I loved doing that. I know that a lot of people got some turns up there. There were some awesome song. Cody Vest, always up there singing Back That Ass Up. I see you, Cody. That's so much fun because people start dancing. Oh, it's the best. I really hope you all had as much fun at that party as I did. I exhausted myself, I won't lie, because I was making rounds. I was kind of walking around to making sure I saw as many people as I could and talked to as many people as I could. But it was fantastic. And one of the things that made it fantastic was the fact that it was everybody. And I want to talk about that for a second because it's really exciting to me. When I say it was everybody, I mean that in previous years, I've done my own meetup, right? And Triviality, our friends over there, have done their own meetup. And last year, Misinformation did a meetup, Sports Trivia Face-Off did a meetup, and the Illuminati have their mixer. And so everybody kind of did their own thing, and it's kind of hard for people because, okay, I got to do this, I got to do that, and everybody's trying to schedule things. And so I'll tell you a little story at the end of, or at last year in Las Vegas, I went to the Triviality meetup. It wasn't at the same time as mine, and it was fun. They did a great job. And Neil and I were talking afterwards, and he brought up that Geek Bowl was in Chicago in 2020 and asked if I would be interested in maybe combining forces, and instead of doing one or instead of doing multiple things, maybe we could just do one combined thing and make it a big thing. And that sounded like a great idea to me, and that was kind of what kicked it off. We started bringing other people in that we thought would be useful. I said that wrong. It's not useful. We brought other people in that we thought should be a part of it. And so as that grew, as we kept adding people, we found more and more that this was going to be a really good idea. And the thing that I want to kind of talk about is how important it is that we all have good relationships. There was a time, it didn't have to be like that, when maybe a year in or so after Triviality had started, and Triviality is probably the first show that really kind of grew up and started getting a good amount of fans after we did. And so it would have been easy to try and push back, or to try and be standoffish, or to try and even talk badly. We never did that, though. I can remember when I was a fan and I wasn't a podcaster. Well, I was an early podcaster. It was early on in my run. And I was still a fan of Good Job Brain. They were still putting out episodes. And I reached out and I tried to engage with them probably 10 different times. I thought that would be a match made in heaven. And I never got any responses. I did get one. We did get Chris Kohler on back in the early 30 episodes. But I couldn't get the group on. I couldn't make it work. And that was all really disappointing to me. And I remember the pain or the frustration of knowing that we're here in the same space and we could be doing things for the same people, and that it would be amazing and people would love it. And so as other shows started to appear back a few years back now, I decided that I was going to be as supportive as I knew how to be. Obviously, I'm not going to sit here and advertise for people or whatever, but we've never had a real rivalry. We've never, and it's been intentional. I've been as friendly as I know how to be with all the other shows that are out there, and they've been reciprocating. And so I feel like all of the podcasts in the trivia space now really have good relationships with each other. And that's what has allowed us to do something like that mixer. The fact that, and I'll tell you right now, the Neil and Jeff and the folks over at Triviality are the ones that spearheaded. They led that. That's their home turf, Chicago. They did the most work. And I'm grateful for them doing that. So I just want to call that out and just kind of talk about that for a little bit, how important it is to maintain those good relationships, and how really helpful that has been, I think, for all of us. And I think it's great for you guys as listeners, because, while obviously you have to choose what you spend your time on or what you spend your money on or whatever, I think that the fact that we're all kind of rowing in the same direction, that can't be anything but good. And so that whole event left me with a really, really good feeling. And I give all the credit in the world to all of our partners who came together to make that happen. I really, really thought that was great. Next day was the triathlon was the first big thing. So this was Jeremy Conman. This was Nick Groves from City Trivia, Conman from Brain Bash Trivia, and Cheyenne and Tim from Questionable Company. There's a little story behind this. Going in probably a few months back, a while back now, Tim and Cheyenne were the ones who hosted the game at the Trivial Warfare meetup last year, and they asked if I wanted to do it again. And I told them I've already committed to doing the group thing. I've already committed to doing the extravaganza, so I really can't. But I had also been reached out to by Jeremy, who was interested in doing something too, because he's a Chicago guy. That's his home turf. And so I connected them and then brought Nick in because I knew that he was going to be there and I knew that he would be interested. And then they asked, okay, so what should we do? And I'm like, that's not my job. That's the way Tim tells it. Tim's like, yeah, you bailed. I'm like, yeah, that's right. But they got together and they created the triathlon, which was a hell of an event. There was a lot of people there, and there was good money to the winners. And it was a really good setup. I was really impressed by what they did. I shouldn't have been, though, because they're so good at what they do. All of them are. The questions were super hard in a lot of cases. There were some really good questions, though, and I thought that teams that played together as their Geek Bowl teams in particular probably benefited from getting that practice time in, working with each other and talking to each other. I know that my team, Nikki and Dustin and Kelsey and Andy and Caitlin and myself, we played together, and it was really, really good for us. I felt like we all kind of found our roles quickly on the team, and that went really, really well. We finished 8th out of however many teams were there, and it was, as hard as that quiz was, that felt really, really good to finish 8th, so that was really exciting. Kudos to Nick and to Jeremy and Tim and Cheyenne, because that was a hell of an event. I really hope that we do that again in the future. One thing I noticed, though, on a personal side, I guess I had worn myself out the night before. I feel like I must have, because I was feeling very introverted on that Friday, the Friday of the triathlon. The next things on Friday were, it was the triathlon. Then it was doing the watch along with Lynn Yu's Jeopardy game. Congratulations to Lynn for being on the show and for doing such a great job. I know I was really, really rooting for you. And then it was to go over to the Illuminati Mixer, and then there was the Geek Bowl pre-party, and it was just such a full day. And I did a quick walk around at the beginning of the triathlon to say hi to some people, but I just wasn't feeling like talking to people. And that sounds weird coming from me. I know you guys think I'm an extrovert, but I am originally an introvert. And so I spent most of my time upstairs with my team playing the game. And then especially at the Illuminati Mixer, it was kind of tight, kind of crowded, a lot of bodies kind of bumping up against each other on accident as you try and move through the space. And I was shutting down. I really was. I wasn't as friendly as I wanted to be. I wasn't as outgoing as I wanted to be. And what I was finding was that I didn't have anything to talk about. That's a fear for me. I don't know if you guys have that fear of like running into somebody and trying to start a conversation and not figuring out what the common ground is, and you're stuck kind of not saying anything. That's a big fear for me. I've always had that, and that worries me. And that happened a couple times with people that I like, with people that I think are great. And just like, I need to back up. And I ended up going off to the side and kind of sitting with some of my teammates. Caitlin and Jeremy and Marna came over, and we just kind of did our own thing at this table quietly. And I think that was pretty good for me, honestly. It was better than trying to force it. I did end up in a fun conversation with Katie and Rachel and Scarlett and Katie Cawley. So Katie Sikelski and Katie Cawley. They were the merry murderesses, by the way, at the event, and everybody should be their friends. I don't know if you guys know them or not, but I enjoy that whole team tremendously. Ranjani and Amy as well. That's a fantastic group of people, and they're really fun to talk to and hang out with. But anyway, we started talking about Learned League that day because I hadn't submitted, and they waited for me to submit, and we kind of talked about it, and that was really nice. It got me out of my funk a little bit. But then when we got to the pre-party for the Geek Bowl stuff, I was just out of it. I sat with my team for a couple of hours and drank a little bit, and then it's like, I'm getting out of here. I thought I was going to go to bed early. Got back to the hotel around 10:30 and ran into Leanne Whitlock and Russ Friedwald and Steve Perry. And I thought, oh, they're in the lobby. I'm going to sit down with them, and that'll be good. We'll just sit and relax and talk, and that'll be low-key. That'll be awesome. I really like all three of them. And then people started reaching out and excuse me, I need to take a drink. And then what tends to happen at Geek Bowl is people are doing stuff. And I had a couple of people telling me, hey, we're doing this if you want to do it. Hey, we're doing that if we want to do it. And I did. I mean, I did. And so even I had just sat down with the three I mentioned, and then I had to say, excuse me, and I got up. I know that I enjoy Bill Patchek. He's a friend, and his whole group, Jeff and Brandon and Andy and all those guys. I enjoy them. I think they're great. I think they're really smart. They're a lot smarter than I am. But they were doing some stuff with their buzzer. They were doing Trash of the Titans questions with a buzzer system. Pam was in there too, and a few others. And I jumped in, and boy, was I overmatched. That it's really humbling when people are ringing in and answering things correctly before you've comprehended what is being asked for in questions. But that's what was happening. In the course of about 45 minutes, I rang in and answered one question correctly before anybody else did, and it was a baseball question. But it wasn't bad. In fact, I might invest in a buzzer system because I think I would like to be able to run or have people be able to set up games and play games where they have to ring in, because that's a totally different kind of trivia. And I'm not great at that kind of trivia, frankly. If I ever get on Jeopardy, I'll probably stink because Trivial Warfare has spoiled me a little bit, I think. Trivial Warfare allows me to really parse things out and think through questions. Buzzer stuff doesn't really let you do that. You got to be super fast. And it's a different kind of trivia, but it's still a really cool kind of trivia. And I had a lot of fun trying to beat the others. Later the next day, in between lunch and an escape room that my team did and Geek Bowl itself, I got to go back up there and we did some more buzzer stuff with a smaller group, and they were easier questions. I wasn't good compared to the others in the room, but I was better. I was better than the night before. The night before, trash questions aren't my thing to begin with, so that was probably a disadvantage. But I found that it's really fun. It's nice to kind of test yourself and to push. So that's something I might do in the future. That's something I might, and I really appreciate, Bill, if you're listening, I appreciate that invite. That was really sweet of you. Thank you. After I played with them that night on Thursday night, I had the chance to go up and spend time with Tara and Jason and Ricky and Lee. And I found out that Nicole and Addie were up there, and I got to meet Amelia Hirschberger, which I wanted to do, which was nice. And we were playing Ultimate Trivial Pursuit, which is a Paul Boyer production. He combined 12 different decks of Trivial Pursuit in a game where he's modified the rules so that you have to progress through different decks as you play. And you can't even do like a roll again. A roll again is just a randomization of where you are within the progression. So you might end up having to answer from the Star Wars Trivial Pursuit deck, or the Lord of the Rings deck, or the original deck, or the vintage deck, blah, 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 right? You're still trying to collect pie pieces, but Lord have mercy, that game was challenging and fun. And if it wasn't so late at night, I think we all might have done a little bit better. But there was some great moments playing that game. That was really fun, and I really appreciated that invite as well. That was just a lot of fun. And so on that night when I thought I was going to go to bed early, I ended up going to bed at 2:30. Yeah, that was the earliest that I had gone. That was the earliest in the Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. That was the earliest I went to bed any night. It was 2:30 in the morning. So I'm tired, y'all. I'm so tired. On Friday, was that Friday? Yes, that was Friday. Okay, good. Saturday was low key. Did lunch with Andy Saunders, who's on my Geek Bowl team. And then we did an escape room. Some of our team was there. Some of our friends were there. And then Russ joined us as well, who's also one of our friends. I'm not saying that he's just not like related to any of us. Not my fault. I asked him to marry me, but he said no. And we played an escape room that had a 35% get rate and finished it in 43 seconds using one clue. Not seconds, 43 minutes. 43 minutes using one clue, and it was a good room. It was a lot of fun. That was the Great Escape was the game company. So that was a lot of fun. And then it was time for Geek Bowl. So my team got together for dinner beforehand. We had to have an early dinner because the show started at 7. And I'll tell you, off the cuff, just right up front, I'm going to tell you that I thought that this was the best run game of Geek Bowl that I've been to. I've been to 4 now. I've been to Seattle, Boston, Las Vegas, and now Chicago. And it was the shortest, I feel like, especially in terms of grading out the scores and finalizing it and being done with it. I thought it was a little bit easier in some places. In particular, round 7 seemed really easy because there were 3 quote clues from different movies. And so that one, I don't think people had the chance to differentiate from other teams if everybody's getting most of them right. Our team, or my team, we were really happy with our first 3 rounds. We got all 8 in the first round and all 8 in the third round, and 13 out of 16 in the music round. And we considered doubling, but we didn't want to, so we didn't double there. And at the end of that score break, because we hadn't doubled, we were behind. We were at 112 at the first scoring break. And then the fourth round hit us, and the fourth round was hard. It was so hard. It was hard for us. Maybe it wasn't as hard for everybody else, but they would give you a center out of a series of information, out of a list. They would give you the center of the list and tell you what they were grading it on, and you had to say what the first thing on the list was and the last thing on the list was. In some cases, that was like one of the examples of that was gold medal winners in the Olympic all-around from the U.S. And they gave you Nastia Lukin, I think, if I'm remembering correctly. And so and it was by time. And so the first one, we figured out, we got both of these right. The first one was Mary Lou Retton, and the last one was Simone Biles, and Lukin was in the middle. So that's how that worked. You had to give 2 answers. And this was a possible double round because there were 16 possible answers. But we only got 9 out of the 16. And that hurt us. We were really frustrated with how hard that was. And that's one of those rounds where Geek Bowl, being different than almost any other game you play, where the game goes so fast at that point where you're trying to think of so many different things, 2 things at a time for every question. And then you only get a 2-minute countdown after that to finalize your information and turn it in. With more time, we would have gotten more points, obviously, and everybody could say that. But that was one of our biggest challenges. Then round 5, we killed it. We got all those right. No, we missed one. We missed one because we said party on the river bloat. instead of River Bloat Party or something like that. It was you'll hear about it if you go and look at the way the questions were. But it was a clever round. It was a fun round, and we did really well at it. But then round 6 was stupid hard for us. Maybe it would have been better if we knew food, but it was really hard for us, and we only got 3 out of 8 in that 6th round, and that sank us. If we had just had a normal round, a normal bad round, like 5 out of 8, then we would have jumped 15 to 16 spots in the final results. But we didn't. We got 3 out of 8. And then we had a great 7th round and a really good 8th round. And we doubled the 8th round. It was 13, so we got 26 for it. And at the first scoring break, my team was at 112. At the second scoring break, we were at 122, which we thought we were going to drop farther, and that gave us a lot of hope. And at the end, after doing the double on the last turn, we jumped up to 58th place. And so that's where we finished, 58th place. And that wasn't as good as we did last year, but there were some rounds that we were just a lot worse at this year. And I'm not ashamed of where we finished at all. 58th out of 230 something is not a bad performance at all. We had a good game. And I think more importantly, we have a good team. I really like the people on my team. We added Kelsey Barkham this year, and she's great, super smart. Caitlin and Nikki and Dustin and Andy, we play well together. We enjoy each other's company, and I think that that's as important. I mean, obviously I like being competitive and I like winning, but I also like playing games with people that I think are good or cool or fun, and we're definitely that. And I really love that about the Geek Bowl experience. One last thing before I wrap up is, as the game started, we realized we hadn't figured out what we were doing afterwards yet, and the suggestion of a piano bar came up. And I realized if anybody was in a position to kind of get people all going in the same direction, that it was me, because I have a lot of people there who are my friends. And so I decided to give it a try. We picked a piano bar. There was a popular one that was highly rated called the Redhead Piano Bar. It was not too far away from the main hotel, and so we picked it, and I started passing the word. I went and told probably 15 tables personally. Obviously, I'm not telling all of Geek Bowl, but a lot of people with a lot of connections to me that I passed it along, and I told them to pass it along. Well, that worked. Unfortunately, it worked too well, because the piano bar wasn't big enough to hold us. When my group got to it, there was a line outside with a bunch of us in it, and they were only letting one person in at a time as one person would leave. They were at capacity, and so that sucked, because it was really exciting, the idea of going to a piano bar. It's a lot of fun. We're going to try and do something better next year. Maybe do something pre-planned and make sure there's space for us. But so I kind of stuck my foot in my mouth on that one, because I got everybody going. I got them moving in a direction, and I got them in a direction that didn't work very well. So I had a little bit of shame about that. But we called an audible. There was a lot of great people that were outside in the line, and we decided, okay, well, let's go to this other place nearby that Jeremy knew, Jeremy Goodson. And so we went, and it turned into a pretty good party. And, you know, the night just kind of disappeared. The night after Geek Bowl, because the event, I guess, ended after 11, but you don't really feel like it ended after 11. And so then you walk to the place, and you walk to the other place, and you have 2 beers, and all of a sudden it's 1:45, and they're closing up. Last call, and it's like, oh my God, we haven't even started. Nobody wants to go home. I mean, there's people that have to, but we don't really want to go home yet, because if we go home now, that's the end. Most of us have to travel in the next morning. So we didn't. We went back to the Bellwether, which was the bar at the bottom floor of the main hotel, which stays open really late. And a lot of us ended up spending a couple of hours there. And daylight savings time screwed us all. It just added an hour. So instead of being 2 o'clock in the morning, it was 3 o'clock in the morning all of a sudden. We had people that ended up singing their own songs because they wanted to sing, and it was just a lot of fun. I left out of there around 4 o'clock because I knew I had to do my little personal hangover prevention, especially knowing I was flying the next day. I'm really paranoid about having to use the restroom on a plane because of how big I am and how small those restrooms are. So I needed to get myself fully hydrated and then drained out, for lack of a better word, before my flight to avoid a hangover. So I had to go up, and I didn't get to bed until like 4:45, 5 o'clock in the morning, this morning, as a matter of fact. Luckily, I was able to do a late checkout. I didn't check out until 12, so I got up at 10, I guess 10. I was able to see a couple of people before I left. I ran into Tara and Paul, and then Dustin and Brooke. And now I'm home, and I'll tell you one thing, the end of Geek Bowl, it's a lot like podcasting conferences. When you get home, there's that feeling of loss. There's that doldrums feeling where it's like, oh man, I wish life could just be like that forever. I really do. It would be amazing. It's kind of like, it must be what it felt like for Pinocchio when they end up in that fantasy land or funhouse place before they start turning into donkeys, obviously. But that's kind of what it feels like, is just this perfectly fun thing where you would love for it to last forever. And that's why I look forward to the next things. And I look forward to all the different people that I'll hopefully see at Trivia Con and then again at Trivia Nationals in Las Vegas. One of the things that I just really enjoy is when you see the same people multiple times, you're able to build real relationships and you're able to become real friends. And after that happens, you never know. Maybe you'll run into each other outside of trivia events. Maybe you'll be good enough friends to go visit. And that's an amazing thing. That's so much fun. But then there's also new people almost every time. People, you might know them from the internet, or you might not, but I'm continually meeting new people. Brian Nash was there for the first time this year. I met Susan Herder. Congratulations, by the way, to Dan Burgess and Susan Herder and their team. Don't Stop Us Meow from Minnesota, finishing in second place, coming out of nowhere. Shock the world. Holy crap. Y'all were awesome. Just, that's fantastic. But anyway, I shouldn't get into naming names because there's so many new people, so many different people, but I just love that. I love it because you kind of expand and you grow and you meet more people, and that means you have more fun. You have more chances to have fun. So I encourage you, if you ever get a chance to come out to these things, I would do it because you're going to meet awesome people and you're going to have fun. And I'll get to say hi and I'll give you a hug because I'm a hugger. I'm like Bailey. I'm a hugger. All right, that's going to wrap it up. I went a lot longer than I thought I was going to go. I hope that was not boring, but I'm going to bet that for some of you it was. Sorry. It is what it is. I love y'all. I hope you have a great week, and we will be back with episode 261 on the patron feed. If you don't know what that is, you should go to trivialwarfarearmy.com. If you sign up as a lieutenant or above, a lieutenant is $5 a month, and you get access to our full archives, over 150 archived episodes, as well as every other week we do a patron-only episode. So we actually do 4 shows a month, but patrons are the only ones who get them. So if you want more Trivial Warfare, that's how you get it. All right. I will look forward to the next time that I'm able to talk into this microphone, which will be recording another game. Until then, peace out, guys.
Thanks for listening to Trivial Warfare. Be sure to check out the revamped TrivialWarfare.com as your one-stop shop to submit questions, join the community, and get access to over 150 archived episodes. Warm It Up was written and performed by Matthew Stevens. This episode was edited and produced by me, Joel Sharpton. For help with your podcast, visit ProPodcastingServices.com.